Hello students, good morning. So we are going to start with the daily current affairs. Today you will have the 8th of January 2021. So today we are going to cover the current affairs related the news for various competitive examinations. Okay, so this part of your the lectures would be useful for your UPSC civil services examinations as well as other governmental examinations. All right, and I'm basically referring the two national newspapers. The first is basically the Hindu, and the second is Indian Express. All right. So you can refer these two newspapers. You can read both of these newspapers. Also, you can read any of these newspapers. Both of these newspapers are equally good for your civil services examination preparation. All right. So you can very well comprehensively cover your current affairs portion day-to-day basis from these two newspapers. All right. Apart from that, we are also providing here a platform for you to revise and to read your daily current affairs. Right. So you can join us on future IAS, right? And we would have the daily current affairs related news on day-to-day basis. All right, so let's begin with the lecture. All right, so first one is related to the basically a standing committee. All right, so that standing committee is basically related to the National Board of Wildlife. So there is one animal that is called cat, right? So the cat is basically the special type of cat which is known as the caracal, right? So caracal is the name of the cat which is found mainly in the parts of Rajasthan and the Gujarat. All right, this cat, you can see this figure. This is the cat. All right, so this cat, which is known as the caracal cat, this cat is basically is critically endangered. For example, you might have heard about right the red list of the species which are there. For example, the IUCN made the red list of the species which basically categorize the animals into the different classes. For example, the first one is basically related to the extinct class, where where you won't find the animals basically in the wild, right? The second is basically the critically endangered, where the few animals have been left out. Like that, you have the different classifications of those animals as right, which are basically in the fewer in the number, right? Like any other classification like endangered, right, vulnerable, right? All such classification basically signify right the present the number of the animals which basically live on the earth. So this critically endangered, the animal which is also known as caracal is critically endangered, and the National Committee on the National Board of Wildlife, right? This standing committee basically in its 60th meeting has approved certain animals basically on the critically endangered list of species, right, which is related to the India. Now the caracal was also included in the list of critically endangered species. Now what is the benefit of including in this list of critically endangered species, that you must understand. If you include any animal in the critically endangered species, obviously that animal will get the more protection, right? It will have the greater conservation efforts, right? The more protection in terms of the better financial support, the better the caring support, right? All sort of other facilities which will be provided, so that the species should, their number should not decline further. So ultimately the purpose of providing all such conservation effort is to rule out any possibility of getting any particular animal into the extinct, right? Extinct in the wild. So for that thing, this caracal was also included in the list of critically endangered species. All right, for making a conservation effort, right? And it is basically the scheme which is known as the development of wildlife habitat. So under this scheme certain financial support will also be provided to to the states which are having the population of caracal, right? So it is basically a medium sized cat which is found in some portions of Rajasthan and the Gujarat. All right, now you can see here there are 22 wildlife species under recovery program for critically endangered species. So like that caracal, there are other 21 species which are under recovery program, because such animals, their number are very very few, right? If you do not protect them, obviously what will happen, right? They may get extinct over the period of the time. So in order to make them available, or in order to make the enough number of those animals, you should give them certain protection. So for that, the recovery program was started. So one such recovery program was already decided to be started for the caracal, which is a medium sized wildcat. All right, so this is basically medium sized wildcat looks very fascinating. All right. Second, the human wildlife conflict. This is the second news. So all of you knows about the human wildlife conflict. So this is basically related to the human wildlife conflict, where the humans are basically ingressing into the territory of wildlife. For example, we started clearing the forest. All right, we started making the dams, right, the buildings, constructions, roads, railways into the forest areas. All right, so this has led to the increasing in the human wildlife conflict. And moreover, you must understand, the wildlife has had degraded, or the quality of the wildlife has also been degraded, and many animal got extinct because of this anthropogenic regions. So there are many regions which basically makes the wildlife more vulnerable, right? Many species got critically endangered. Even their habitat got destructed, right? Environment got polluted, right? There, for example, there are some tracks, or there are certain the areas where the elephants used to roam. Now this has also been destructed because of railway lines, because of the canals, because of the roadways, right? All such things has led to the human wildlife conflict. Even now, the wildlife will basically sometime also attack the humans, because there are many villages which are nearby your wildlife sanctuaries or the national parks, where the wildlife used to have. So it is quite natural that if we ingress into the territory of the wildlife can, or the animals can basically attack on the humans. So that is how related to the human wildlife conflict. All right, so what is happening is that, again, the standing committee on the national board of wildlife, the standing committee on the national board of wildlife, in its 60th meeting, which was held on the 5th of the January, has approved the advisory. It is an advisory for the management of human wildlife conflict. So first of all, you must understand, this standing committee of the national board of wildlife has approved this advisory for the states, so that this conflict, which is related to the human and wildlife conflict, can be reduced or can be minimized to a certain extent, and the loss which caused by this conflict should also be minimized. Now, this one keyword here is that related to standing committee. So you must understand, there are two types of committee. One is called a standing committee, right? Another is called basically ad hoc committee, right? The standing committee means this committee continue to function throughout the year, right? So here the committee membership would be, say, 1 year at a time, but it do not dissolve. It do not dissolve. It continue to function. Ad hoc committee means the committee which is framed for particular purpose. Once the purpose got over, the committee is automatically dissolved. All right. So this is the difference between standing committee and the ad hoc committee. So here, what are the advisories which issued by the standing committee of the National Board of Wildlife? Is this advisory makes the important prescriptions for the states and the union territories, right? These important prescriptions basically related to the issues which are related to the human wildlife conflict. All right, and this advisory seeks to expedite the interdepartmental coordination, because you must understand, the interdepartmental coordination is very much essential, and is also very much warranted in order to reduce the human and basically animal conflict. All right, and the advisory provisions or advisory which are emphasizing or which are basically trying to empower the gram panchayats, because you must understand, the villages which are located at the periphery of this wildlife areas, right? There are certain villages, right, where these villages are more vulnerable towards this the animal conflict, right? So you need to empower this gram panchayats to deal with such situations. So here, as per the sections of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, as per the sections of Wildlife Protection Act 1972, right, this advisory tries to make, right, the Gram Sabha empowered or the powerful, so that the human and environment conflict can be reduced to certain extent. All right. Now, how would you reduce? The point is that you have to understand two things. You have to understand two things. The first thing is that if there is a human animal conflict, what is the implications, right? The application may be in the conflict, the human may die. For example, if a lion or a tiger attacks any human being in the natural corollary, the human being will die because the human is not as powerful as the tiger or the lion. Oh, right. The second thing may be, right, if the lion or the tiger attacks the villages, if the villagers got together, they may kill the lion or tiger. So in turn, then the wildlife is getting killed. So, or sometimes what happens is these animals basically just roam inside the for example your the khet or your fields, which may also destroy your crops also. So there are many implications: destroying of the crops, killing of the animals, right, killing of the human being. Many implications may be there. So in order to reduce that negative implications of human and wildlife conflict, right, this advisory basically utilizing the add-on coverage which provided under Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. This add-on coverage which will be provided under Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, right, for the crop compensation which are destroyed, right, which are destroyed due to the human wildlife conflict. All right. So here the simultaneously it also aspired to augment the fodder, because fodder is essential for the animals and the water resources within the forest areas, right? So that to reduce this human and wildlife conflict. And this advisory itself also calls upon the payment of a portion of ex gratia as an interim relief within 24 hours of the incidents to the victim's family. Or like, for example, if during this wildlife conflict, right, if any person dies, or right, or their crops destroyed, so certain payment of a portion of ex gratia would be provided as an interim relief within 24 hours of this conflict, right, of this conflict. And you must also understand this advisory which is provided by the standing committee also emphasize the prescribing the interdepartmental committees at the local level. Now you must understand this is standing committee is basically an advisory committee, right? It has no such enforcement powers at that level, so it can prescribe, right? So it is prescribing the interdepartmental committees at the local level or at the state level. So if you make the interdepartmental committee, you may ensure that there is close coordination between the departments. And and it's also provided the adoption of early warning system. For example, you may provide certain type of fencing where the animals once touch, it may ring, or it may sound some sort of a siren, so that the animals can basically move away, or some other warning system by which the animal can drift away from these fencing signs, right? Or creation of certain barriers. You might have seen also in some zoological parks where certain barriers have been created for the animals so that they do not cross, or they do not venture out, right? So that there is the minimization of the conflict. Or dedicated circle wise the control rooms with the toll free hotline numbers. So you have the circle in the forest area also, right? So if you provide the dedicated control circle wise control rooms, right, that will also provide greater enforcement capability, and that will also reduce any chances of the poaching of the animals also, and that will definitely reduce any chances of human animal conflict. And certainly the identification of the hotspots, because you need to identify those hotspots which are more vulnerable towards this conflict, right? And formulation and implementation of the realistic spatial plans, right? Because ultimately you have to make the plans, and you have to implement those plans so that it can basically reduce the human and animal conflict. So all such things are very much needed, right, in order to reduce any conflict related to the human and the wildlife. All right. So this is the news which is flashing in the Hindu newspaper. All right. So here you can see here there is elephant, which is basically there is a human and animal conflict, right? The humans are basically chasing the animal, or they are trying to provoke this elephant, and elephant is trying also to defend himself. All right. Next, the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. Okay, the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas basically is celebrated right on the 9th of January every year. It is celebrated on that day the Mahatma Gandhi basically returned to India. All right. So it is basically great Pravasi who returned to India. So in his contribution, the Pravasi Divas was celebrated. it was decided by the government of India to celebrate the 9th of January of every year as a Pravasi Bharti Divas. So here, this is the 16th such Pravasi Bharti Divas, which will be celebrated on 9th of the January, right? And you must understand it will be celebrated, right, in the virtual format. That means there will not be the physically meeting of the people. It will be celebrated in the virtual format. That means through the video conferencing. All right, it is because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is because of this COVID-19 pandemic, and the theme of this, the convention basically is contributing to the Atmanirbhar Bharat. All right. Now, this Pravasi Bharatiya Divas convention will be inaugurated by our Honorable Prime Minister of India, who is Narendra Modi, and there will be also the chief guest. The chief guest would be, the President of Suriname, right, who is also known as Chandrika Prasad Santoki, right, who is also having the roots from India, right, also who is also the Pravasi, right, and who would be basically the chief guest, right, in the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas convention. All right. Then there is also, an online quiz which is known as the Bharat Ko Janiye quiz, right? So here the winners also of this quiz will be, announced, right? And the awards also will be provided. And you have also the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman awardees for 2020 and 21. Here also the names of the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman awardee will be announced, and their prizes also will be distributed. All right. So this is all about, and he is Pravasi Bharati, and it is the poster of the Pravasi Bharati Divas, right? All right. It will be, conducted by the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. All right. Let's understand the new news. That is G. Krishnan Reddy Committee. G. Krishnan Reddy Committee. So what is that G. Krishnan Reddy Committee? So you might have heard about the recent Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act, so which has led to the division of the Jammu and Kashmir into the union territories or into the states, right? The Ladakh have become a union territory. All right. So here, what happens is the Leh region basically has their separate, cultural identity. They have their separate language, right? So in order to protect them, right, there are various, issues of the issues related to language, issues related to the culture. So what happens is, the people, or the delegation which basically came to the meeting to the Amit Shah, who is our home minister, and this 10-member delegation from the Ladakh came and met with the Union Home Minister Amit Shah, and they basically, gave inputs regarding the unique culture and the language of the Ladakh region, and requested the Home Minister to basically protect the same, or protect the language and the culture, right? And in order to carry forward, the center has decided to form a committee, right? So here the committee will be formed to protect the unique language, culture, and the land of Ladakh. And there's the Union Home Minister basically ensured that the unique culture and the language of the Ladakh region will be protected. And here, the more emphasis will be provided to the citizens' participation in the union territory development. All right. Now, as the center had decided to form a committee, this committee will be headed by the Ministry of State for Home. And Ministry of State for the Home is basically G. Krishnan Reddy, who will be heading this committee. And this committee obviously would be including, other representatives also. For example, this committee, which will look into, the unique aspect of language and the culture, would also include, the representatives from the Ladakh, or the elected representatives from the Ladakh, right? Say a member of parliament, a member of legislative assembly, right? The elected representative of Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council, as well as the representatives of the central government, as well as the representative of Ladakh administration. So these will provided the greater input regarding the protection and the safeguarding of unique aspect of language and the culture. Okay. Now the decision to form the committee, as I told you, it was decided after the delegation who came from Ladakh and met with Union Home Minister Amit Shah, and basically they expressed their views regarding the need to protect the Ladakh's unique cultural identity. and this is the view of the Ladakhis. Okay, so all right. Next, the new industrial development scheme for the Jammu and Kashmir, right? So this is the scheme for for the Jammu and Kashmir. So you must understand, recently Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act, Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act have trifurcated the Jammu and Kashmir into the union territory, right? So here, the Jammu and Kashmir is now become completely integrated with India or Indian mainland. Previously, there was certain autonomy which was there with the Jammu and Kashmir. Now this autonomous part have been removed. All right. So some articles which is relevant to the Jammu and Kashmir have now been removed. All right. For example, Article 370, which was repealed now. All right. And the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs has basically approved a separate scheme for the industrial development of Jammu and Kashmir, because you must understand the industrial development, previously there was some limitations regarding the who can purchase the land, right? Who can inherit the land, who can basically, right, who can be the permanent resident of the Jammu and Kashmir, and related lot of issues were there. But now these issues seems to be resolved, and the Cabinet Committee on the Economic Affairs has decided to launch a scheme for the industrial development of the Jammu and Kashmir, right? And it will have the total outlay of around 28,400 crore, which will be provided up to year of 2037. That means from 2021 to 2037, the 28,000 crore rupees would be provided to the industrial development of Jammu and Kashmir. All right. And this scheme is basically formulated by the government of India, all right, for the Jammu and Kashmir, and that's why it is also the central sector scheme, right, for the development of industries in the union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. In the union territory of Jammu and Kashmir, right. The main purpose of the scheme is basically to generate the employment, obviously, because if the industrial development is going to occur in the Jammu and Kashmir, the greater benefit is to be provided to those the people who reside in the Jammu and Kashmir, in order to generate the greater employment, and which will definitely lead to the socio-economic development of the area. Because ultimately, if the industrial development is going to occur, obviously you will have the backward and the forward linkages will be there, and the ancillary industries which are supportive to those to the main industries will also be there, and that will also generate the significant amount of employment, and that will definitely attract further investments, right, from all over the world and all over the country in the Jammu and Kashmir, and that will boost the economy of Jammu and Kashmir, right? All right. For this thing, the new industrial development scheme for the Jammu and Kashmir, is basically implemented, right, is going to be formulated by the government of the India. All right. So it is a central sector scheme. All right. So let's understand certain incentives which will be providing under this scheme. So certain incentives. So first of all, the capital investment incentive. So whoever is putting the capital in the Jammu and Kashmir will be provided certain incentive. For example, there are certain zonations, right? For example, zone A, zone B, right? In the Jammu and Kashmir. So here, the people who basically invest in the zone A, right? So the capital investment incentive will be provided at the rate of 30%. Okay, if the people is investing in the zone B, right, the capital investment incentive will be provided at the rate of 50%, especially in the plant and the machinery, in the manufacturing sector, or in the construction of the buildings also, right, as well as other durable physical assets, right, which are also included the service sector. So here you must understand 30% of capital investment incentive will be provided in the zone A, in the manufacturing, the plant and machinery and other durable physical assets, and 50% of the capital investment incentive will be provided in the zone B, right, for making these plants and the machinery as well as other durable physical assets. All right. So this is the first incentive which will be provided, right, for the investors, right. The second is basically the capital interest subvention. So here the capital interest subvention is to be provided at the rate of, or at the annual rate of 6% for the maximum 7 years on the loan, which will be provided up to 500 crore, right, for those people who are basically investing in the plants and the machinery. All right. So here the capital interest subvention will be provided for the annual rate of 6%, right. It will be provided again in the plant and the machinery, or in the manufacturing sector, or in the construction of the buildings, right, or in all other the durable physical assets, right, which may be constructed in the service sector also. All right, so there are certain benefits which will be provided or which will be availed, right, under this scheme. All right, so this is the news which is flashing in the Hindu newspaper. All right, and there are another benefits also, the GST linked incentive. This GST linked incentive means, right, the 300% of the eligible value of actual investment made in the plant and the machinery, right. So here you will have the, if any sort of a, investment which is GST linked, right. So here you will be providing the 300% of eligible value of actual investment you made in the plant and machinery, in the manufacturing sector or in the machinery or in the construction of the building, or just like in the service sector in the durable physical assets for 10 years, right. So this amount of incentive in the financial year will not exceed 1/10 of the total eligible amount of incentive. So there is certain limitations for the GST linked incentives, and there are other incentive also. For example, the working capital interest incentive also. For example, the all existing units at the annual rate of 5% for a maximum of 5% will be providing the working capital interest incentive, right. There is a maximum limit of this incentive is 1 crore rupees, right. So these two, the GST linked incentive and the working capital, the interest incentive will be providing certain, the benefit also to, to those people who basically, invest in the Jammu and Kashmir. But there are certain limitations for it. For example, for the working capital interest incentive, there is a maximum limit of this incentive is 1 crore rupees. All right, so this is basically, the Dal Lake of Jammu and Kashmir. All right, then coriander, the dhania. Okay, so coriander, so here what is the news is basically related to, the Spice Board of India, right, which is a basically regulatory board related to the spices. Coriander is one such spices. And DBT SABC Biotech Kisan Hub, in the collaboration of ICAR, NRCSS, and RSAMB and Kota Agricultural University, organized the Word Coriander webinar, right. So here they organized the Word of Coriander webinar, and this, the theme of this Word of Coriander webinar was the accelerating quality production of the coriander, post harvesting value addition, and the export of the coriander from India, right. So here you must understand the Department of Biotechnology, in associating with various institutions like Kota Agricultural Universities, right, as well as the contribution from the Spice Board of India, has organized the Word of Coriander webinar, right, for ultimately accelerating the quality of the production of the coriander from India, right, to reduce the post harvesting loss from the coriander, right, and to add the value on the coriander, as well as to increase the export of the coriander from the India. So you must understand there are certain pockets which are known for coriander production, right, which are known for coriander production. For example, the Rajasthan is the highest producer of coriander in the India. So the Hadoti region of southeastern Rajasthan, right. So Hadoti region of the southeastern Rajasthan is the largest producer of the coriander in India. Apart from that, the Guna district of the Madhya Pradesh is also known for coriander production. All right, and these two, mainly the Hadoti region of southeastern Rajasthan, basically contribute the major share in the coriander export from the India, right. So these two states combinedly, Rajasthan and the Madhya Pradesh, contributes the major export from India, and the largest producer basically is the Hadoti region of Rajasthan. Okay, if you see the mandi, so here if you visit the Kota district, okay, so you people would have studied in the Kota, so where you have Ramganj is basically station, okay, nearby Kota. So there you have the Ramganj APMC mandi, okay. So Agricultural Produce Marketing Committee, APMC means full form means Agricultural Produce Marketing Committee, okay. So here Ramganj APMC mandi is located at the Kota district, right. So it is the largest coriander mandi in the Asia. Okay, it is the largest coriander mandi, and Ramganj is also known as the coriander city in India because of the highest amount of production of the coriander in the country, right. So all right, and the government of India recently, the Ministry of Food Processing Industries has signed a coriander to the district of Kota, right, assigned a coriander to the district of Kota in the list of one district one product scheme. So the scheme which was launched by the government of India under the name called one district one product. So under this scheme, the coriander was assigned to the district of Kota in the Rajasthan as a product which will be promoted as the one district one product scheme under the government of India. All right, and this coriander which will be provided or which will be incentivized further, right, for the further export from India, right, especially from the district of Kota of the Rajasthan. All right, so here it is basically the coriander, the dhania, which is the green leaf. All right, and this is what the figure. All right, let's understand the liberalized MSME AEO package. All right, so here you must understand the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and the Customs, which is basically a regulatory body. So this Central Board of Indirect Taxes and the Customs had taken a new initiative, right, to introduce, a liberalized MSME AEO package. So it is a package which will be provided for the micro, small, and medium enterprises. MSME means micro, small, and medium enterprises packages for the micro, small, and the medium enterprises for their developmental purpose, right? So you must understand this liberalized MSME AEO package was introduced by the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and the Customs, basically to attract the MSMEs to become authorized economic operator. Okay. Now, what will be the benefit if the MSME have become the authorized economic operator, right? So that they can avail the various benefits. Okay, and they can also get the benefit of relaxation in terms of compliance criteria which are provided. The MSMEs have valid certificate from the line ministry. All right, so they will get another benefits like relaxation in terms of compilation criteria also, compliance criteria also, and the relaxed requirement to allow MSME who have filed a minimum 10 custom clearance documents in 1 year, right, and who have clean compliance record of over 2 years to apply for the scheme. All right, so the government is already have relaxed a certain requirement to allow or to attract the MSMEs into the fold of authorized economic operators, right? So for that MSME, they can eligible to apply for the scheme if they have filed minimum 10 customs clearing documents in 1 year, right? So they should be filing at least minimum 10 custom clearing documents, right? As well as who have clean compliance records over 2 years. Only those MSMEs will be eligible to apply for this scheme, and they can become the authorized economic operators also. All right, and the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and the Customs, it is a flagship package which is also known as the liberalized MSME AEO package scheme, is a voluntary compliance program, right? So through this voluntary compliance program, right, what will happen, it will basically enhance the custom clearance for several stakeholders in the global supply chain. For example, customs is basically related to those issues which is related to the export and imports. For example, there are custom clearance at the airports, there are custom clearance needed at the ports, if there is certain items to be exported from India or certain items to be imported from other countries to India, so you need for that custom clearance. All right, so it will basically smoothen the custom clearance procedure, right, for certain stakeholders which are in the basically global supply chain. For example, there are many importers, there are many exporters, there are many logistic service providers, custodians, which will be benefited out of this liberalized MSME AEO package. All right, and it will definitely derive other benefits like the facility of the direct port delivery of imported containers, direct port entry of export containers, and etc. All right, so all such facility will be provided to the MSMEs, which will become basically the authorized economic operators. And under the scheme, the MSMEs will be provided to the facility of direct port delivery of the imported containers, as well as the direct port entry of the export containers. All right, let's move to the new news. All right, next is spectrum auction. So already you know that the spectrum is basically related to the telecommunication, where it is a band, right? It is a band of the spectrum which will be used for the telecommunication purpose, right? For example, your cell phones, your TVs, right? Your internet, everything is related to the spectrum. So there are certain bands of the spectrum, right, which is allocated for a particular transmission, which is allocated for the particular transmission. So each band is dedicated to the certain type of services, and which are basically used by the LOTs, right, for the specific period of the time. So here the auctions are generally conducted regularly by the government of India, and through these auctions the government basically get revenues, right, or get lump sum amount from the LOTs, and in return the LOTs will provide the telecommunication access to the common people or to the people of India. So here the Department of Telecommunications said on January 6th that the auctions for 4G spectrum in different bands, for example, there are many bands, for example, 700 megahertz bands, right, 800 MHz bands, 900, 1800, 2100, 2300, and 2500 MHz bands will become from March 1. So the auction for 4G spectrum for these bands will become from March 1, right? What will be the benefit? The devices, for example, your cell phones, wireless telephones, right? All such things require the signal to connect from one end to the another. All right. So what we use basically, all sort of a cell phones and wireless signals or wireless telephones require all sort of a connections or certain signals to connect. Now these signals are basically carried on the airwave, right? And they must be sent through some particular frequencies, design frequencies, right? These frequencies are related to the bands. For example, these are bands, for example, 700 megahertz band, 800 MHz, 900 MHz. So there are certain frequencies for each band. Why this each band has certain frequencies? So that it avoid any kind of interference, right? If there is the common frequency, obviously you cannot send the multiple amount of the signals, because definitely that will interfere with each other. And to remove such possibility of interference, we have the design frequency, right? Through this the separate signals will be sent. And union government basically owns all publicly available assets, right, within the geographical boundary of India, and which will also include the airwave also. All right. So here you will have, for example, with this 4G auction, 4G spectrum auction, there will be expansion in the number of cell phones. Obviously there will be certain limitations for every frequency also. You cannot send multiple signals, or you cannot send unlimited signals. So you need the expansion of the number of cell phones, because to cover the geographical area, right, in order to have the greater expand of the geographical area, you need to expand, right, this the spectrums, right? For that, it is needed the auction in order to provide the greater coverage. If you want to provide the greater number of cell phones, wireless telephones, internet users, all need more space for the signals, right, which basically arise from the time to time. And that is why the government of India sold from time to time these spectrums through auction process, right? Now to sell these assets to the companies, for example, to the Bharti Airtel, for Vodafone, right, for Reliance, there are many stakeholders in the market, right? So they basically, the government of India sells these assets to the companies who is basically, willing to set up the certain set of infrastructure. For example, you might have heard about these towers, right? The big towers, which basically, set up by these telecom companies, right? These big towers basically used for transporting these waves, right, from one end to the another end. And there are one receiver, there are one, sender. All such, will be done through this spectrum allocation, and there are central government through the DOT would definitely auction these airways from time to time. And these are auctioning, this is not ownership, we are auctioning, which will be auctioned to those telecommunication companies. And these airways are called spectrum, right? These airways are called spectrum, and these spectrums will be auctioned to to those stakeholders, which basically benefited out of it, and which are divided into different bands, which have varying frequencies, as I explained you, right? So these spectrums are divided into bands, and each band will have different frequencies, right, which are sold for a certain period of the time, right, after which their validity lapse, they generally set for the 20 years. So there is certain validity for this lease, right, for example, set for 20 years, and after that it requires certain renewal for this this process. All right. And the next news is first advance estimates. All right. So this first advance estimates were basically released by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So this MOSPI, the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, has released the first advance estimates of the current financial year. Okay, so that let's understand the key findings of this first advance estimates. The key findings are basically the real GDP, which was calculated at 2011 and 2012 prices, in 2020 and 2021 have been estimated to be contracted by 7.7%. That means the real GDP would be contracted or have been estimated to be contracted in year of 2020 and 21. So that is the real case, which is basically we are facing also. The economy is going down, and the nominal GDP is current prices, by 4.2%. So both the real GDP is contracted by 7.7%, right, and the nominal GDP is contracted by contracted by 4.2%, right, if you calculate it on the current prices basis. And if you take the reference year of 2011 and 2012, and we are calculating for 2020 and 2021. All right. And as per the quarterly estimates of the National Sample Organization, NSO, the real GDP is contracted by 15.7% in the first half of 2020 and 2021. So you see here, the real GDP is contracted by the whopping 15.7% in the first half of 2021. Right? Why it is contracting? This because of the coronavirus. All industrial development have been stopped completely, right, for the brief period of the time, and which has led to the loosening of the demand. And if there is no demand, what is the purpose of production, right? Obviously, which has also led to the contraction of the overall real GDP also. On the demand side, the real GDP in 2020 and 2021 have been supported by the estimates of its increase by the consumption expenditure by 5.8%. All right. So this is basically the findings which are there in the first advance estimates, which are compiled by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. And on the supply side, the agriculture is estimated to register a positive growth of 3.4%. Right. So the agriculture is getting the positive growth of 3.4%. Right, it was the positive growth rate of 4%. It was calculated in 2019 and 20. So it was definitely lower than the 2019-20, but it is good. It is good. In the manufacturing sector, electricity sector is registering and estimating the positive growth of 2.7%. It is also good, right? But it is definitely a low side. All right. And the pandemic and associated public health measures have been adversely affecting this, different sectors. Right, for example, trade, hotels, transport, communication are estimated to be contracted by 21.4%. It is because of the pandemic related implications, because of corona related implications. All right, let's understand the next news. The India report on LASI wave 1. Okay, so what is this LASI? This is LASI means the longitudinal aging study of India. All right, so here the Union Health Minister basically released the India specific report of the longitudinal aging study of India, right? So it is related to the health parameter. So this report is basically the longitudinal aging study of India, which was released by the Ministry of Health and the Sciences. All right. So here, what is this LASI, or what is this, the LASI? The LASI is nothing but a survey of scientific investigation, right? So it is a survey of scientific investigation of health, right, of the economic and the social determinants and the consequences of population aging in India, right? So the survey was conducted in terms of the scientific investigation of the consequences of population aging in India. And you must understand that in 2011 census, 60 plus population accounting for 8.6% of the India's population, which is accounting for around 103 million elderly people, right? So this is how this is how the population spreads when we see 2011 census. And through this survey, we are basically scientifically investigating the health, economic, and social determinants and the consequences of population aging, right? And if we are growing at around 3% annually of this population, the number of elderly people will rise to 319 million in 2050. All right, from 103 million elderly people, right, from 2011 to 319 million in 2050. So you see basically almost three times elderly people will be increased. So here around 3% annual increment in the population of elderly people, it will rise to 390 million. and 75% of these elderly people suffer from some sort of a chronic diseases, right? The chronic disease may be, say, heart related impairment, maybe any sort of a psychotic related impairment or anything, right? And about 40% of elderly people have one or other disabilities, any sort of a disability may be there, and 20% of these elderly people has issues related to the mental health. So through that survey, we have concluded that 75% of the elderly people will suffer from some sort of a chronic disease, 40% will suffer from one or two other disability, and 20% will have definitely some sort of a impairment related to the mental health. So it is related to this LASI, which is a report which is published by the Ministry of the Health and which is related to the longitudinal aging study of India. So it is basically the survey which was conducted to determine the consequence of population aging in India, right? So she is basically the aged person, all elderly women, all right. So that's all for the today. Thank you very much for attending this session. Thank you.